Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our Honorable External Affairs Minister of India is with us now. I would like to request everyone to kindly raise on their seats for the national anthem. Thank you. Good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today's evening is a wonderful occasion, and presence of Dr. S Jaishankar, Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, makes it an even special moment. The Consulate General of India in Ho Chi Minh City and the members of the Indian diaspora with a sizable presence in Ho Chi Minh City are elated to welcome Dr. S Jaishankar, our Honorable External Affairs Minister, to Ho Chi Minh City. I would start by introducing the dignitaries present with us today. From the Indian side, we have His Excellency Dr. S Jaishankar, Honorable External Minister of India. His Excellency Mr. Sandeep Arya, Ambassador of India to Vietnam. His Excellency Dr. Madan Mohan Sethi, Consul General of India in Ho Chi Minh City. Madam Sogatika Bhuyan, spouse of Consul General of India in Ho Chi Minh City. Friends, today also we have received few of our Vietnamese friends who have time and time again helped the consulate in various events in this part of Vietnam. So I would like to introduce them. Mr. Huyen Than Lap, President of Vietnam-India Friendship Association. Mrs. Ho Thi Chin An, Vice President and General Secretary of VIFA, and other Vice Presidents and VIFA. Ms. Gwen Thi Hong Dim, Vice Chairwoman, Ho Chi Minh Union of Friendship Association. And around 300 members of our Indian community in Ho Chi Minh City. I would like to begin this event with a short highlight video showcasing the first ever visit of Honorable External Affairs Minister to Vietnam. Now I request Honorable Minister Dr. S Jaishankar and His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Sandeep Arya to please come on the stage to take their seats. I would now request His Excellency Mr. Sandeep Arya, Ambassador of India to Vietnam, to deliver his opening remarks.
Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S Jaishankar, dear members of the Indian community, Namaskar and good evening to all of you. It is my privilege to welcome the Minister of External Affairs of India, Dr. S Jaishankar, to this gathering of the Indian diaspora in Ho Chi Minh City today. The stellar personality of Dr. Jaishankar needs no introduction, particularly in this information age. After 40 plus years of exceptional diplomatic experience, top corporate position, and now a highly regarded political leadership role with a second term in the Parliament of India and an acclaimed strategic thinker globally, Padma Shri Dr. Jaishankar is highly respected for top standards of professionalism in India and among the diplomatic community around the world. He is leading with aplomb the Indian foreign policy amid uniquely complex times in the world today, reflected in his wide popularity and respect among the political leaders in India. I may admit that as a diplomat, he is an inspiration to so many Indian diplomats and to me personally. We are truly honored to have the company of Dr. S. Jaishankar today. Dear sir, Ho Chi Minh City has had a special association with the Indian community for a long time. Scholars have written about the visit of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore in 1929 to the then Saigon. Historians have cited the support received by Indian freedom fighters from the community in Ho Chi Minh City. The Indian origin community in Ho Chi Minh City numbered about 50,000 plus people in the early 1970s, which declined in the aftermath of the war. When Vietnam's economic reforms took off about 30 years back, the Indian community started growing in the city again. We estimate that more than 5,000 Indians live in and around Ho Chi Minh City, which is the largest concentration of the Indian community anywhere in this country. The community is very dynamic, visible, and appreciated, as we hear from the leadership of the province. Their success and their achievements are heartening for us to see, be it as corporate leaders, flourishing entrepreneurs, valued senior-most executives in global and Vietnamese companies, self-made business persons. A large number of the community are contributing to India-Vietnam relations through trade, manufacturing, service sector, and in the cultural arena, where teachers, academicians, and yoga teachers in particular, deserve a special mention. Operating from Hanoi, I sometimes feel away from the vibrancy of our community and its activities in the Ho Chi Minh City and nearby areas. I would not like to stand in between the Honorable External Affairs Minister and the community today. May I request you, Honorable Minister, sir, to kindly share your thoughts on the occasion with the members of the community. Please welcome Dr. Jaishankar.
Ambassador, Consul General, dear friends, Namaskar and good evening to all of you. Let me begin by saying that it's really a great pleasure to be here in Ho Chi Minh City. It's my first visit to Ho Chi Minh City, but actually my third visit to Vietnam. I was last here with the Prime Minister when he came 7 years ago. And I am here this time because I was co-chairing a joint commission, which is the main body between the two governments, to assess our relationship and how we take it forward. I had very good meetings yesterday in Hanoi. I also called on the Prime Minister. And just to convince you that I was actually working very hard, they showed you a small film about what I was doing. Now, I would like to talk to you about the relationship. I would like to tell you what happened on this visit. But I really want to start with my first visit here. And my first visit here was in 2011. I was at that time ambassador in China. And I came here actually on a holiday. The ambassador was Mr. Ranjit Rai at that time. And some of you may wonder that, someone who lives abroad, why would they come to another country on a holiday? Why don't they perhaps use their holiday in India? But I came here for a particular reason. I was very interested in going to a place called MEA. Many of you would have heard of it. It is the oldest connection that we have between India and Vietnam. And I was interested in visiting MEA because as someone who had represented India abroad all my working life, who took interest in history and culture, I wanted to see for myself what we had been in the past. And perhaps at that time that feeling was not so sharply defined even in my own thinking. But in a way, it was to look at what was the historical identity and presence and contribution of India in the world.
Now, I don't know how many of you have been to MEA. To those who have not, I strongly recommend it. It is today the heritage site from the Champa kingdom. There was a king called, the most famous king was a king called Bhadravarman, and he built a series of temples there dedicated to Shiva Bhadreshwara. And the Champa kingdom lasted about 1,000 years, from the 4th century to the 14th century. Now, you might ask, why am I trying to give you a history or a cultural lesson here? I'm not. I'm actually asking you all to be aware of what we India and we Indians have done for the world all these years. And I mention this because today, a sharper awareness of that is actually central to our own understanding about ourselves. That if we today take pride as Indians, pride at what is happening today at home, pride at what our achievements are in the world, and I'll come to some of those. I think it's also important we take pride in the history of the world in which we have played a part. Now, we have been engaged in restoration, conservation projects in MEA for some years now. A few years ago, in fact, there was a very remarkable discovery of a Shivalinga with the pedestal, with the Adhisthana
also located along with it. And the level of interest that we take today, I want to tell you, is reflected in the fact that in the foreign ministry, we have one I would say division, we call it. It's like a unit, which is exclusively dedicated to promoting this kind of cultural work abroad. They have been active in Mission, they've been active in a few other places in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Bagan, in Myanmar, in the Ganden Monastery in Mongolia. But the reason we are doing this is for all Indians, but especially Indians who live and work abroad. It's very important that you have a good sense of what has historically been an Indian footprint in the world. Now, those of you who live here, I think, have a particular obligation in this regard, because when Indians started going out of India, they either went east and came to Southeast Asia, or they went north and mostly along the Silk Route, they went to Central Asia, or they went west with the monsoon and went to the Gulf. But the strongest and even today most visible presence of India is actually in Southeast Asia. It is in every Southeast Asian country. It is in their culture, it is in their names, it is in their habits. It is very, very, today we are very much a part of the intellectual and world and the social fabric in this part of the world. Now, the ambassador mentioned that there was a time when, not just in Vietnam, but across Southeast Asia, there were fairly large Indian or Indian origin communities. Sometimes in history, there are ups and downs. People come, people move out. But once again today, the world is very welcoming to India, and Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries particularly so. So the growth today of the Indian community here, it's not just people gathering together, people, who have come here as part of a global workplace. In many ways, there is a history to it. There is a cycle which is coming back. Today, as India grows, as India contributes, we are going to see actually more and more Indians across the world. And certainly Southeast Asia and Vietnam, a place where we have such strong connections, such good relations, would be at the heart of it. Now, let me switch gears and talk a little bit about my current visit. As I mentioned, I had an opportunity to meet Prime Minister Chin, hold talks with Foreign Minister Son, met people in the party leadership in Hanoi. And if one looks at the state of our relations today, our trade today is about $15 billion. India and Vietnam, we are probably the two fastest growing economies in Asia, actually fastest growing economies, probably in the world. There might be some smaller ones which are an exception. And there's no question today, given the economic energy and today the optimism, which all of you know better than me because you live here and you have a first-hand sense today of the business atmosphere, of the economic outlook out here, and I can certainly vouch for it back in India. It's very clear to us that this $15 billion trade can grow and grow very fast, and what we have to do is to set very ambitious targets and to clear a pathway for those targets to be realized, and a large part of what we did was to address ourselves to that. A second set of issues for every country, defense and security is very important. We have long been
reliable partners of Vietnam. In the past, we have supplied equipment, we have done training, we have helped, even now we have teams who contribute to capacity building in this country. So how do we take that forward? That was the second cluster of issues. There are a number of other areas. Energy is again is a subject, a domain where we have long to work with Vietnam. Our companies have been drilling here for many decades now. So the sum total of really my visit in Hanoi was really about how do we today as two governments, two countries, two societies, broaden out our relationship, look for ways of accelerating our cooperation. And, you know, you can actually see year on year this improvement. Some of it can be in the kind of trade numbers I gave you. Some of it might be more directly relevant to you, like the number of flights between India and Vietnam, how many points it touches. I see that the number of tourists are also growing. In fact, today, when I took a little time off and went to the museum, in fact, I bumped into a whole lot of Indian tourists who are here and who are heading on from here to Hanoi. So there's no question today that in many ways our relationship is a good fit. There's a lot that we can do. But at the end of the day, when we speak about cooperation, cooperation is done by people. And you are the people. And one thing I must say, whether it was the Prime Minister himself and the leadership in Hanoi, or the party secretary who I met this morning, they had the warmest words for all of you. And, you know, whether it was the professionals who are working here, the business people who are here, the sense was really that Indian community was an asset to Vietnam. And as Vietnam globalizes, there was a very clear message. Look, we are very happy to see the community grow. And I can tell you, nothing can make a visiting foreign minister happier than to hear good words about his community. I had also on this visit the opportunity to unveil two busts. One you saw in the short clip, which was of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, which was in Bucknin yesterday. And this morning in Ho Chi Minh City, some of you were also present. I unveiled, along with the Deputy Chairman of the People's Committee, the bust of Mahatma Gandhi. And I mentioned that to you again, because these are not formalities. When any country, any city decides that they would put up the statue of a foreign leader, you know, a lot of thought goes into it. I know because we do that in India. So whenever we in India in any city, you know, get a proposal, we also do our own evaluation. We apply ourselves to the relationship, to the person, to the messaging, to the signal. And to me, the fact that two of the greatest icons of our country have both in different cities today have found expression in a very, very public place, that to me is a very, very strong messaging about where the Vietnamese leadership would like to take our ties. So where India and Vietnam are concerned, you know, I've spoken about a very narrow, you know, cooperation, economics, defense, but there is also a larger fit. The fact is, if there are three qualities that the two countries share, one is a very strong sense of independence. Two, a very deep commitment to self-reliance, that we would like to do our own thing.
We would like to apply our own mind. We would like to make our own judgments. But at the end of the day, we are both societies and we are both, the thought processes are very similar, that we take pride in what we do. And the third, of course, is culture and cultural pride, which is why I mentioned to you Misan as well. So if you look in terms of temperament, there is a lot. It's not an accident that India and Vietnam have had such good, such strong relations over such a long period. And today, I can say that chemistry between us as people, as countries, that chemistry is also today supported by what is happening in the world. That when we look at the state of the world, it is actually today a very volatile world, very uncertain. A lot of things are very difficult in many parts of the world. And this part of the world is not without its own challenges. But again, those challenges have actually only strengthened our commitment and our resolve to do more things together. So, often when I go out, when we have discussions, there are relationships which have a lot of challenges. What I can tell you where Vietnam is concerned, that this is actually a relationship which only has possibilities. And it's up to us, all of us, we as government, you as very important stakeholders, people who have a particular responsibility and a particular devotion to this relationship. It's up to us to realize how much we can take it forward. Now, having spoken about the relationship, I also want to share with you what I heard about India. And that to me is always interesting. Because, in any country, but I think it is perhaps even more so in India, we are very absorbed on our issues. We're very absorbed in our own world. What is important for us is not always self-evident when you go out in the world. So I, today, coming to talk to all of you, asked myself, okay, what is it we have done which has actually occupied the mind space of people in Vietnam? And I refer here to the conversations I had with the Prime Minister, with the Foreign Minister, with other officials, both in Ho Chi Minh as well, a city, as well as in Hanoi. Perhaps the one issue which everybody spoke about in some form was the Chandrayaan success. And I'm sure none of you are surprised by it. That for people, and I myself expected it, because I saw the impact of Chandrayaan in other parts of the world. In fact, we were abroad. I was out with the Prime Minister in South Africa when the landing actually took place. But the impact which Chandrayaan has made, and to some extent the Aditya has also done, but the impact which Chandrayaan has made in the minds of other countries is actually immense. That for them, that really separates out India. It is a testimony of our capability and of our technology, of our management ability. And I can tell you, in terms of branding and reputation, it has actually had an enormous impact in global thinking. The second, and this was personally pleasing to me, was the G20. That again, there was a lot of appreciation of the G20, and there was a sense really that, in a very divided world, a world where the Ukraine conflict has polarized the Western world and the East, you can say, or there are big developmental issues between the North, global North, the developed countries and the developing countries. Somehow it took an India. It took an India to find the middle ground. That in a way, the implication was, it was really
the good fortune of the international community that at that time, this responsibility of the G20 vested with India, and it was the leadership of the Prime Minister and the stature, the reputation of India, which was able to actually forge this middle ground. We, of course, always in diplomacy, naturally for us, the main business are the problems and issues of the world. And again, when people look at that, it could be, our stand on the Ukraine conflict. Definitely, there is a sense, certainly in Vietnam, but I can tell you in a lot of other countries as well, that we said a lot of things which were in the minds of other people. Not everybody could say it. And once we said it, a large part of the world actually really said, oh, we're glad somebody had the courage, somebody had the confidence to articulate that. Because a very large part of the world actually thinks like that. And, again, because it is such a complicated world, that often how to keep friendships, how to keep relationships, and sometimes the relationships are very contradictory. We have today, for example, a group, there's a group called BRICS. It has members like Russia and China. And then we have a group like Quad, which has members like United States and Japan. But it takes again in India. It takes in India to actually bridge the divide and manage that. So if you can see the space we occupy, the reputation we build, the contribution we make, this is today creating that impression in the world that here is a country which is actually able to harmonize the contradictions of the world, bridge the divides of the world, smooth over things, find common ground, get people together. And most of all, I must say, whether it was the G20 or in fact a lot of other forums, today one big difference we are making is that we are able to get the world to look at the right issues. And the right issues of the world today are development, are today climate, are terrorism, are debt. So the rest of the world today is looking very much towards India to articulate a lot of these positions. As I said, once you start articulating, there is a natural tendency, to join and support and sometimes even take it forward. So the overall picture which I want to present to you today is actually of an India very strongly committed here to a relationship with Vietnam. Very much today, I would say, a player and influence in the world. But, what we do in the world ultimately depends on what happens at home. That a good foreign policy finally flows from a strong domestic policy. And the change that has happened in India in the last decade, that is really actually what has made a difference. Now, there are many ways by which people describe it. I can only say that if I were to highlight the key changes which have taken place. One, today we have actually ensured a model of governance using digital tools, where the dream that no one will be left behind is actually becoming a reality. That if you go around in India and you see today the ability of the government to meet the needs of the people, in terms of finance, in terms of food, in terms of housing, in terms of electricity, in terms of water. What were dreams for people today have become, in a sense, basic expectations. It creates naturally more and more, the aspirations rise, but that is exactly how countries rise. So the big change today, and this is actually, it is this change which allowed us to overcome COVID. It is this change today which has actually allowed a very rapid economic recovery. The second, of course, is that we have made it much easier to do business in India. We have made it much easier for common citizens to live in India. That if you go to any office, any service, my ministry runs one which all of you use, passports. Think about it, how much simpler today it is to get a passport. Not just in India. If you have any dealings with the embassy or consulates, no reflection on any of my colleagues, but the fact is today everybody is working much harder. Everybody is actually responding much faster. The systems have become better. It's not just a person anymore. And the systems have become better in moments of difficulty. It happened during COVID. It happened to, students to students in Ukraine. Right now, we are running Operation Ajay. And every day, there's a plane coming back, bringing people from Israel, those who feel it is not safe to stay there at this point of time. So it is today an India where our citizens go out, people like you, with a sense that, look, somewhere the government is there for me, the country is there for me. And that gives people an enormous confidence when they are out. So just as the basic expectations and aspirations at home, in terms of, what is, there was a house, for example, is not a luxury anymore. A road connect is not. Optical fiber cables are not. So I remember when I had just become a member of parliament, I went to a fairly remote village in India. And I was a politician of about 1 month's experience. So I actually asked people saying, okay, what can I do for you? And I was very impressed. They actually said, can you improve the digital connectivity? That, sir, tower ko thoda theek kariye, we don't get good connectivity. It's a different society. And it's a different society at home. It's also, those, today if we are looking at a global workplace, at a global marketplace, at opportunities beyond our country, opportunities which all of you today are utilizing. Your success and your contribution to India. India too has an obligation to secure your back. And that obligation today, I think you can see that we are doing much more strongly. But again, as I want to stress to you, I mean, many of you who go to India often would see this. One part of the change is wherever you go in India today, you can see construction. The infrastructure is changing. There's a program called Gati Shakti, which has made it far more efficient to build infrastructure. Because of digital today, the levels of corruption have dropped dramatically because money is being paid in directly. Communications are much better. Awareness is much better. But you can see too, if you look at the number of educational institutions, in the last 10 years, broadly speaking, actually the number of educational institutions, I'm talking of colleges and universities here, have actually doubled. That what took us 60 years to build, we have actually been able to double it in the last 10 years. So I mention all this to you because all of you today, in some way or the other, you have friends, you have neighbors, you have people who work with you. Communicate this to people in Vietnam. Talk to your friends, Prime Minister Modi's one request whenever he goes abroad, he tells people, please send 5 people as tourists to India. So I say this on his behalf as well. But more than that, the changes which are taking place in India, the different level today of what we are capable of. That is something I think it's important. I think people do get it because it is today a very connected world. As I said, as soon as you meet someone, first they say congratulations on Chandrayaan, congratulations on G20, So they immediately actually have the touch points which reflect on us. So my message to you today is really India is today very much a country on the move. It is a country whose global impact will be felt more and more. You people are at the cutting edge of that global impact. It is really today a nation with many more capabilities, which is able to contribute much more, and as you can see, which has a much higher level of confidence. So, it's always been a matter of pride to represent India abroad, for everybody, not just for diplomats, not just for political leaders. Each one of you represents India when you step out of the country. But that sense of, I would say, today, the pride, the confidence, that feeling today that there is a national rejuvenation which is underway. I think it's important that you feel it, that you communicate it, and by doing that, I can assure you that in many ways, you too are contributing to what we try to do in terms of building India's relationship with the world. So once again, really, I want to thank you all, and I think we have some time. So if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, I'd be delighted to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So as sir said, now we have a Q&A session. So we'll just accept a couple of questions. So anyone who has a question to raise, kindly raise your hand, please.
Honorable Minister, first of all, we welcome you to Vietnam and especially to Ho Chi Minh City. My name is Himanshu Shekhar. I work for an American multinational Whirlpool, which also has presence in India. You talked about multipolar world where each stakeholder has their own interests. And India is the one which is one of the leading countries which is playing a harmonizing role. So my question basically taps on your vast experience in terms of what are the three things that one should, not as a country, but as a professional, should keep in mind, which will help bring different stakeholders with different objectives on the table so that we can drive the constructive discussion and collaboration forward. Thank you, sir.
Maybe I'll take 3 questions.
So we can have a couple of more questions, please.
I see a hand.
So I see one in the back.
Very slow.
Good evening, sir. My name is Sandhya. A very warm welcome to Ho Chi Minh City. Firstly, I would like to give you the credit for verbalizing India's position in geopolitical environment today. My question is very simple. What excites you the most about India's future? And what is your version of future Bharat? What would you like to see it as? Thank you.
I didn't get the last bit. What is my version of the?
Future of India.
Okay,
Future Bharat.
Sure, future
Thank you.
Bharat, right.
One more question, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Honorable Minister Dr. Jaishankar. My name is Subhajit, and I'm working as a professional here in Ho Chi Minh City. I have a very interesting question, actually. In terms of representing India, as you could say, like many diplomats, in our own way, what is the most important way that we can, leverage India's position right now in terms of developing further relations with our other counterparts from the Vietnamese diaspora, or maybe from other countries as well? How do you think we can leverage this to our, well, not our advantage, but to ensure our position remains on a high pedestal, and taking it further to develop relations further with other people as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I must say I'm very pleased with the questions, because in a way it allows me to say a few more things which I haven't said. Your first question about if there were three things, how do you, in a sense, harmonize, or how do you mediate, how do you manage? As Indians, I would say we bring a long view to the table, that as a country, as a society which with a long history, with a tradition, with a culture, it's important really to have the patience and the I would say the ability to see beyond the immediate. That would be, to me, one. The second would be to, which is in a sense you would say very obvious, is to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the other party. Now, you'd be amazed how difficult it is actually to do that, because it is often in human nature, to think what is important to me is necessarily important to you. So that brings me to the third, which is what makes us different. And I would say, and I say this really not theoretically, but as someone who spent most of my life in other countries or dealing with other people, we have a certain, I would say, a pluralism, a willingness to appreciate diversity and nuances in a way in which very few societies do. If you look at much of the world, what happens when you have a nation? People say a nation means usually there has to be uniformity in a nation. Most nations have a single faith, a single language. They try to be as standardized as possible. Actually, if you look at the beauty of India, it is our willingness to go beyond that. And it's not something which is new. People often say, they say unity in diversity, we have a constitution which, it's far deeper than that. It's actually somewhere in our genes, it's in our DNA, it's in our blood. The willingness to act, to have a very sort of wide set of people, and how to mediate and how to get a kind of consensus. So why I mention it is, we often have these debates about democracy. Now, the Western world would have you believe that democracy is something which they have actually contributed to the global thinking. They're not completely off the mark. I mean, typically people would, point to their intellectual traditions. But if you note, the whole idea of, people gathering together, reaching some kind of consensus, confabulation, you can say, it's very deep in Indian society. We have whether it's at a kind of village level or whether it's at a kingdom level, this idea that there should be some kind of sarvasamati before you move forward. So I think today that kind of attitude, that stands us in very good stead. That, even when we did this G20, our willingness and ability to hear everybody out and then say, okay, this is the common thing which five of you have said, let's build on that. I think that kind of quality today will actually have greater value. The second question from the young lady at the back You know, when you asked me what excites you, you answered it yourself, future Bharat. You know, see, the idea of Bharat excites me for this reason. People sometimes think of Bharat as tradition, which it is. But Bharat is also a mindset. Bharat is a confidence. It is, you know, it is something where we believe in ourselves. It's a sense of what we are. And if we can engage the world much more confident about ourselves, our culture, our practices, our traditions, I think we'll get a much better deal from the world. So, you know, when you would all be familiar today with the International Day of Yoga, how much more popular it has become. But I just stop and think about it. You know, something which is rooted deeply in Indian traditions has become so universal. Now, it's an enormous change that we brought to the world. I can give you many other examples which may be in the making. You know, because of COVID, for example, I find the number of people who look at wellness practices, who have started showing interest in traditional medicine, is actually growing. If you even look at, I would say, you know, there is today a big movement in India on millets. Now, if I may be the oldest person in the room, but I would certainly tell you, if any of you had asked your parents or your grandparents, they would be very, very familiar with millets. And you may not be. Because somewhere in the last 30, 40 years, that practice went out of our life. But it is, you know, today people are saying, okay, you know, millets is greener, millets is more nutritious, millets is much easier to grow. So there is a lot going, you know, sometimes when we move towards modernity, we also need to actually ask ourselves if something was part of our life for hundreds, if not thousands of years, it must have had great value for it to go on. So when I look at you know, you asked me, in a sense, what is the future? You know, one part of it is the tradition. One part of it is the technology. And I think it takes us, you know, it takes a society like India to be able to fuse tradition and technology and be equally comfortable with both. That's really, you know, that is really what will actually give us our standing in the world. That people people already, you know, today, after all, I mean, in a sense, I'm coming to the last question, leveraging. You know, I was living in Japan in 1999 was turning into 2000. And some of you would remember Y2K. Okay, and we saved the world by preventing Y2K, by all becoming techies. So what happened on the 1st of January? Wherever you went in the world, people thought, okay, you know, Indians are techies. And actually, I mean, joking apart, I found in those few years, the reputation, India and technology, Indians and technology, today is a very strong correlation that the rest of the world makes. So, but if Indians, you know, the world makes a correlation with technology, but the world also says, okay, you know, these are the people, you know, these are the yoga guys, these are the people who are good at wellness, they live good lives, and they also have that, you know, the progressive, the modernistic thinking. That eventually is, in a way, where we want to be positioned. So when you ask me, you know, what is it we can leverage? You know, how do you leverage India? I mean, it's both ways. The country's collective reputation, the branding that we have, that is something actually even unconsciously you leverage. You know, I'm sure wherever you work,